I read your lips, Helen. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. My name is Cheryl Chapman, and I'm with the California Virtual Campus with California Community Colleges, CVC-OEI. It's kind of backwards. So today we're going to hi, Sue. We're going to start talking about accessibility, which is section D in the OEI rubric. Many of you might have sweaty palms as you start thinking about this topic, but I'm here to put your mind at ease that we're going to try to make it as simple and easy as possible, and also show you why we're doing this and why it's important for your students. So let's get started. Just a few housekeeping slides. In Zoom, you'll see that there's a chat window at the bottom of your window in the black bar. And also, when it pops up, you'll be able to chat to people, and Helen and Sean and Stacy are going to monitor that chat. But we will have time for questions, so if you want to wait until the question time to ask it live, you can do that too by raising your hand. But if you want to save the chat later, if there's links in there, you can click those three little dots at the bottom of the chat window, and then you can save the chat. So that's always convenient. We also have live captions available, and Lenore is our captioner. Thank you. And you'll find that also at the bottom of the Zoom window. Okay, so hopefully many of you are familiar with the course design rubric, which we use at OEI and at One to review courses for quality. Now, during this month, we've had section A, B, and C delivered by Sean and Helen, our other two instructional designers, and they seem to have been pretty successful, thankfully. And we're waiting now to see what to do with section D. And like I said, everybody gets a little apprehensive, but we're going to make sure that we cover the basics. So if you're familiar at all with section D, you'll see that there are actually like 13, 14, 15, 16 sections, but we're going to concentrate on the first 7 and then one for audio and video. So you'll notice that there are checkboxes for D1 is heading styles, D2 talks about lists, D3 is links, D4 is tables, D5 is color contrast, D6 is color and meaning, which is a little different, and then D7 is images. Is that all there is, you're asking? Not quite. There are 2 more that are very important, video and audio. And it seems like that's the first thing that people think about is like the video and captioning. So we're going to touch on that a little bit towards the end. And then we're going to give you a little context. Somebody wants me to make my screen bigger, but I have a 32-inch screen. That's just about at full screen. So let me.
Well, maybe you can make the browser area bigger.
Yes, yes. Well, that's full screen. That's covering my whole screen right now. So, but I can do that for sure when we get into Canvas. Okay, so let's just give you a little context and a little background. And these slides will be available later. And we're just going to briefly go over that. Hopefully it's a review, that the reason we're dealing with accessibility at all is because the Americans with Disability Act and the Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. We also associate this with universal design for learning, which means that we're trying to make sure that all of our materials and interactions are accessible to all students. And you'll see a little bit later that it's not just for those that may have visual, auditory, or physical impairments. It really does help for all students to have access to the materials in different ways. And of course, we know it's the law. Next, we're going to see how we're just going to go through the first 7 items so that you can have some reference when we go into the Canvas course. So let's talk about D1 heading and styles. Now this is this is the language that means that the item is aligned. So heading styles are consistent and used to aid navigation, right? So the assistive technology that they usually speak about is screen readers. And you'll also notice that we talk about heading and styles, and yet when you're in Canvas, which I'll show you the little rich text editor, content editor, calls it headers. So we're going to make sure that we have that cleared up too. just as a little tidbit, when you create a page in Canvas, the very first, or the title of the page is automatically a heading 1. So when you're creating the styles on your page, the top that you have left is number 2. So you make those heading 2s or H2s. So I'm going to show you that too. And then finally, the fonts, colors, and formats like bold and italics, we want to make sure that you're not using that instead of headings. So normally headings, and think about a Word document when you create an outline, and there's heading 1, and then the subheading would be heading 2. And in this case, the title of the page is heading 1. So then the first topic on your page would be heading 2. So you just don't try to mess with it and make it bold. I mean, you can make it bold, but we prefer not, because again, it's for the screen readers, and it's pretty much visually separated when you're using those headers. Then D2. Now, some of you in the courses that we've been reviewing, it's just like habit. You just start typing a list and you say 1 period, and then you start typing, or 2 period, or, oh, I'm going to use a bullet. Instead, if you're using Word as well, create it using the tool. And in Canvas, the same. There's a tool in the rich text editor that you're going to use to make bullets or a numbered list. So that's kind of important. Also, this is a little tidbit that, and maybe you already know this, but if you're making a bulleted list, it usually doesn't have to be in order. So that's how you can decide if it's a bullet or numbered. So if there are steps, then you might want to use 1, 2, and 3. Let's go on to D3. D3 is all about links. Now, I know I've been working with faculty for quite a while, and in the beginning when we were making hyperlinks, it was like, oh, there's the link, and it starts with http://. However, with the screen readers, the user doesn't want to hear that all the time, and even though it says, it automatically says that it is a link, so you don't want to type that out. So when you're creating links, think about it in context of the paragraph. And instead of just saying click here, by the way, we don't want to do that, because then the screen reader is like, click here, and then the behind the scenes says, oh, it's a link, I'm going to click here. Make sure that it's, clear to the student. Instead of read more, well, what do you want them to read? You really want them to read the article. So, by the way, many of these examples are in one of the resources that we're going to give you at the end of how to actually go through section D with the rubric itself. And then if you look at the meaningful text, it says read about debunking the myth of voter fraud. So you just highlight the most important words that could link to your resource, okay? Same thing with the academic integrity policy. You might take the title of what you're referring to and just be sort of specific and direct with the words. So I hope that makes sense. And then finally, D4 in this section. So D4 is about tables. And we always have these philosophical conversations about tables, because in web design, when I started in the late 90s using like early Dreamweaver and things like that, we used tables for layout because there wasn't a lot of sophisticated user-friendly options out there. So we would use tables and lay it out so that it would be all nice and pretty. However, for accessibility, tables should only be used for data or data, depending on the day. And we want to make sure that it's extremely easy for not only the screen reader to read, but a visual person as well. So 3 main things that we want to include. Maybe some of you aren't familiar with the caption option, but there is a caption with the table. And what I found is that a lot of you will type out, like a little title description of the table right above the table. So if you take that and use it as the caption, you can increase the size, a little bit so it's easier to see. And then that takes care of the caption, and it also takes care of the title of your table. Then the other 2 things that are really important, the header row or row header, which just means that you're identifying the top row, and you're also going to identify the column, right? So those are 2 very important options for the table. This allows the screen reader to read it in correct order, and also you can give descriptions later on for more complex tables. The level above that would be things such as other diagram type tables, or those that you use for science things, or very complex sort of tables. All right, let's see, the chat's going crazy, and thank you, Sean and Helen. So now we're going to come to a quick, brief question segment. If you have anything that you haven't caught up with in the chat, or else go on.
Because we have people muted, if you have a question that you'd like to speak rather than putting in chat, go ahead and use the raise hand feature so we know that you've got a question. And to find that, you'll go to the participants area in Zoom, and you should see the little raise hand icon option there. Otherwise, you can put it in chat. So someone is asking, what are tables like with screen readers? I'm guessing she's wondering how a screen reader would read out a table. And Riva, if that's not what you're asking, maybe you can give us more information, but I'm betting that's what she's asking, Cheryl.
Right, and then Laura says left to right and
right.
the column. So yes, it would read it in the natural order. So it would read the headers row, and then the columns, and then across. And again, with screen readers, users can change their options for how things are read. So maybe what we should do also is, in this presentation, give an example of a resource where you can hear a screen reader. And I think if you just Google it, as Helen says, or Google screen reader examples, you'll find a lot of them out there that are very good, and you'll be able to hear how it's read. But as long as you're making sure that the headers make, the row header makes sense and the column header makes sense, and remember not to, try to merge table rows and all that stuff together. You want to keep it very simple. Anything?
And Amy is asking about how-tos. I don't know, Amy, that we really have a chance, enough time to go into specific how-tos, but if you're in Canvas using their tool, and Cheryl, I'm going to usurp your answer here, the little man that she'll talk about later, he will help you set your headings, rows and columns and everything.
Right. And we're going to look at that really fast. So let's move on then, and then we can get to more questions when we're in Canvas, so it might be clear. All right, D5 is about color contrast. Now that does sound self-explanatory. In other words, the background and the foreground should have enough contrast so that it's very readable with low vision, right? Or just readability in general. So the example on this screen has a very light color against a white background. So that doesn't usually help. But in Canvas, I'll show you, when you use the little man accessibility checker, the color box pops up, and it's really easy to find a color that's great, that works perfectly, because as soon as you start clicking around, when that apply button pops up and you're able to click it, then you know you've chosen a color that's accessible. So keep that in mind. The other color and meaning is sometimes it's a little tricky to understand, but it basically means try not to refer to things by color, or to highlight either headings or words in color only. So bold is also used for emphasis instead of color, and sometimes italics, but I don't know, sometimes it gets a little crazy in italics too, because you can't read it too well. However, if you see the examples here, I think we do this sometimes, and not only with colors, but with places on a page, like look at this video below. Well, remember that when the screen reader is reading to the person who cannot see it, then below doesn't really mean anything to them, or above. Just like red, blue, they're not going to be able to identify where that is on the page by the color. Okay, next. Images. And it's funny because usually we start with images on a page, right? We're like, okay, what did you do? Did you add your alt text to your images? So that's basically what we're trying to say, is that for the visually impaired student or user, they won't be able to see that image. So if it adds to the content of your page, you want to make sure you have a descriptive alt link. And as you can see in my example, if there are words in your image, you'd want to make sure that the words are reflected in your alt text. If not, I mean, if you don't want to do it that way, you can actually add it to the content of the page. So if it's on the content of the page and the image is complimentary, then you can mark it decorative. But if it has words, you want to include those. And one thing that we always forget is to remove the .jpeg, .png, or whatever GIF might be there of the name, or in the alt text of the name. And you don't need image of or picture of or photo of, because the screen reader will identify that first. Okay, now we're going to move on to D12. So there's 8, 9, 10, 11 in between, which you can refer to in the rubric, and it deals mostly with reading order and other things that would have to do with documents. So when we talk about our video captions, I can't see everybody, but you can all raise your hand silently if you know that accurate captions are necessary. So YouTube does a great job of adding auto-generated. Haha, not really, because they don't. Sometimes people don't speak clearly. So yeah, the words don't always come out the way that they should. So if it's your video and you've put it on YouTube, or you've uploaded it to a program like Relay or Canvas Studio or 3C Media, who will do the captioning. But anytime that you're doing captioning on your own, make sure you have punctuation, capitalization, and the spelling, and make sure the right words are there, because I'm sure you've heard some examples where it might not be the right word that you intended. And then I have an example of Helen's bite-sized canvas here, where it shows a great example of what we mean by punctuation and capitalization, right? So just make sure that the person that's reading it is going to get the full effect of what you need to, or what you're intended to tell them. And then of course, if the video has no audio or instructional relevance for a soundtrack, then you can also have a note explaining the video. So it's more like a descriptive or audio description. I'm sorry, not audio description. It's just a text description of what's going on in the video. Sometimes you'll see this on your TV captions where it actually will put in the information like, you know, door opens or something like that. So a little bit more than just the narration. And then last but not least is D13, which is the audio. And if you have just a podcast or an audio file that you want the students to listen to, we need to have a transcript so that those that cannot hear it can read it. The best way to do that is to have one that is time-stamped to go along with the video. I mean, if you have the video, but it doesn't hurt with the audio too, because you can fast forward. The other way is to take the time-stamped and make it into a narrative. Again, if it's just a podcast. So that's pretty quick, just going through those. And now we're going to pop over to Canvas, unless there are any questions here that we can clear up in the...
I think we've got them all, but if someone has a question, again, you can either put it in chat or raise your hand, and Cheryl will be happy to, I can read her it in chat, or she can answer out loud.
Out loud. Okay, so now we're going to go over to Canvas. Let's see. This is my example of a home page. Oh, Kathy just raised her hand. Caption is the photo app. Okay, sorry. Shiny thing, saw a squirrel. I'm going to click on edit, and we're going to go into the Canvas Rich Text Editor. Move that out of the way. And this happens to be the new Rich Content Editor. I always say text. And we grab the, let's see, 8 little dots to make the window bigger. All right, so let's go back to D1, which is the headings, right? This is my heading, and if you notice up in the toolbar, it is a heading 2, because like I said, the title of the page is always heading 1, and I will make this, is that better? A little bit bigger. It's going to be a little wonky, but that's good. So it's D2, and then underneath, again, this is an example of a home page, so I've got some directions in here. So this is now a paragraph at 12 points. We don't usually change the paragraph size. We leave it at 12 point because it is the default, and also it's great for, well, better for the mobile devices, tablets and phones, and it doesn't get too crazy big. I always joke with instructors that I'm working with, it's like, yeah, we might not be able to see it, but there's a lot of people that can, and on their devices they can actually make it bigger for themselves. That's just a little tip. So I'm going to show you, and I'm just going to jump around a little bit between, you know, D1 and 7, because now we're going to go to the actual image. So when you bring your image into Canvas and you click on it, in the new editor, you've got this little option tab. And when you click on it, the little window slide thing will come out, and that's where you can add your alt text. This is also where you can click it if it's a decorative image, okay? Which again, it's decorative if it adds something visually to those who can see it. However, it does not take away from the content of the page for those who cannot, which is kind of important. And then you're going to 90% of the time embed that image instead of a text. And you can also change the size, which is really cool because it gives you the option to keep the aspect ratio. So that's really cool. So again, type in your alt text and you're done. Then the next thing that we talked about, D2 in links, say I wanted to create a list out of what I have here under communication. So you just type your information on the page, you know, hit the return, and then you highlight what you want to make into a list and go back up to the top of your editor. And if you notice on the top right, and again, it might look a little different for you guys, and my window's a little smaller, so it's not totally expanded, but you'll notice the bulleted list is visible. And then if you click on the down arrow next to it, you'll find that you've got more options. Now, for those of you in the audience that were using the old rich content editor and this one, woohoo for me, because look, I've got the option now to use closed circles, open circles, squares, 1, 2, 3, capital ABC, and Roman numeral 1, 2, 3. Before, we only had numbers and regular bullets, right, that were visible. So this is pretty cool because now we don't, for those of us who wanted to do, you know, a little bit different outlines, we don't have to use the back-end HTML code. So this is really cool. So what I said before, right, if there's no real order, I could use bullets. So I'm going to use the straight on bullets. So now that's accessible as a list. What I was talking about before, and I'm going to show you what to avoid, is if I were creating a list and I typed 1 period, go to the store, and then 2 period, come home, right? Silly, but cool. If I were to do that and not use the bullets, and I'm going to interject the little man right now, which in the new editor, he's at the bottom and he's in a little circle and he is the accessibility checker. So if I click on him, he noticed something's amiss. I typed in the number 1 and the number 2 and he says, hey, you know what? Those lists should be formatted as a list. So watch, don't miss it. It's going to be quick. I'm going to click on format as a list, click apply, and now I get the balloons. So what it did was it created a list for me. So if by chance you forgot and you started typing 1, 2, 3 or ABC, you can fix it with the little man. Okay, cool. Now I can get rid of that because it makes no sense. Let's see, next would be links. So as you notice down here, this is a blue underlined link. And by the way, tidbit, please don't use underline unless it's absolutely necessary, and I can't even imagine when it is, because what happens is students think that it's a link. So avoid underlining and use the headers and bold if you want to make it you know, a little bit more readable. So now I have my link here. I'm going to show you how to do this. If you click on it and go to options, again, the little slide out window comes at you and it tells you what the text is on your page, for your link, and then it gives you your link. So that's where you can go and look at it. To create the link itself with the new text editor, you can highlight the words, go back up to the top. It is a little scrolling. And now we want to do the links, but if you notice, I don't have them right here because my window's a little smaller, so I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. And when you do make the window bigger, the toolbar will extend. If you are still missing items, there are 3 dots at the end that you can click and see if there's anything else hiding, which there is right here. So first, let's go to the link. It looks like a link. I've already highlighted my words, but it's down on the page. And I'm going to click. And if I wanted to go to an external link, I have that option. But let's make it a course link. So I'm going to click on course links. And this is a little bit new in the new editor. That was kind of redundant. Right now it says links, right? So I can link to a page, assignment, quiz, blah, blah, blah. I want to show you also, though, I can go to my course files, and user files are something different. But the course files is your file folder, right, where you've stored all your documents before. So if you have a PDF syllabus, which is accessible, that might be in your course files, and you can click on that and find your document. And I'm just going to show how that works. Okay, you'll find your documents in here. Probably don't even have a document in here. And then you would link it, but that's not really what I want to show you, because I want to show you that the links for the syllabus is so cool if you're using the syllabus tool, because you just go to course navigation and click on syllabus. Okay, and then we'll show you when we save that where that goes. So basically that's about links. You don't want to put the HTTP, you highlight the words to make the link, and off we go. So then we're going to go down the very bottom and click save. So we did our alt text, we have our headers, we made a list, and we made a page. Make sure it works. This should go then to our syllabus tool page, which it does. And I'll go back home. All right, now tables. Let's see, we're going to create a new page with a table so I can show you from the beginning. I'm going to go to pages and click on a new one, because tables, they're not very flexible, but they still work. They work well, especially, now wait, pasting them from Word is a little bit crazy, so you might want to create them new in Canvas, but the table tool is over to in the 3 buttons side of the new one, and it's actually hidden under the 3 dots. So if you click on the table tool, you'll be able to insert a table like you would in other programs, picking the number of columns and rows. So we're just going to pick 5 by 4, and it creates a table. This new, I don't know if it's new, I think it was in the old one, I can't remember, but this little toolbar here lets you operate in the table, like for adding columns and rows, or deleting columns and rows, or deleting the whole table, which is also in the properties. But so let's say that this is going to be our header row, right? So we're going to do, maybe you're doing a schedule, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. And then maybe on the right-hand side, you'll be, week 1. Whatever it is, you're going to have to information and data on both ends for the column. And just to make it easy, we're just going to type them in here so that you can see what happens. Okay, so now when I check with the little accessibility guy, he's like, you don't have a caption for this table. And it does show me that I have 2 issues. So I wonder what that other issue might be. So I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to say, what am I creating? Well, I'm creating a schedule. So let's give that the caption. Here's the course schedule. So when I type that in, it's going to fill it in as a caption. And then I click, okay, apply. Awesome. Then it tells me what my next issue is. And it's the headers. I have no headers because I didn't identify them in the properties at first. So what Helen was saying before is you don't have to do that in the properties area. You can just use a little man. So if I say, oh yeah, I need a header row for sure, and then click apply, we're done. And it bolds it, isn't that great? And it centers it, amazing. So that's how you can tell that your header row is awesome. What I said to you, what I said before is that you can also highlight the caption if you wanted to make that a little bit bigger. In font size, just to, you know, to make it look good on the page. And I'm going to save it, show you what it looks like. And there you have the table. What else did I want to show you here? Oh, the properties. So if you did want to alter the properties, you can click once in the table, go to the three dots to find the table icon, then go down to table properties, and then you can also do cell, row, and column. And as in, you know, extra tip, you can do that in the row column. You can create the header row in there, but in the table properties, you can do the width and all the spacing stuff. So by default, it works pretty well just using the what comes out of Canvas. So let me see. Are there any questions to this point?
Yes, but they're not about this particular thing.
Okay.
Is that okay? All right. So, well, Ron is right now asking about tables. Can the table be exported? I don't think so.
Exported
from out of Canvas. There's no way to export it. You could copy and paste it, but it's not an Excel file or anything, so there's not a way to export it. Kathy did have her hand up, so I'm going to ask Kathy if you would unmute yourself and ask whatever your question is. If you still have it, if it was already answered, you can tell us in chat. And I'm sorry, that was Kathy Schultz.
Oh.
And Canvas, or not Canvas, Zoom does not give us the ability to unmute you anymore. So you have to, okay, let me try something. Give me 1 second.
Magic, Helen.
Yeah. While you're doing that, would you
add color?
Try again, Kathy. See, it should let you unmute yourself now.
Thank you. Yes. Now,
okay.
It was actually somebody else's question, but I really wanted to hear the answer and I didn't see it come through the chat, although I may have missed it. If the image that someone is including is a Wordle, and I've had a few people do that, create a Wordle so it's got all those words in it,
Mm-hmm.
what is the best suggestion for your alt text? To just mark it decorative?
Okay, so 2 things. It's got a lot of words in it.
Yeah.
Right? So what would you describe that as? Like if you had to describe the Wordle, how would you do that?
A mix of words applicable to the topic we're studying.
Right, and maybe what I usually suggest is that they try to get it, you know, into the content of the page. We've been discussing blah, 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 and there are many terms that, you know, whatever you want to say. But yeah, I don't know if Helen has any other thing, but I usually mark it as decorative and have the content reflect it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. So the explanation on that page would somehow make reference to some of the main words that are in the Wordle.
Right, because it's a representation of the content. So I'm trying to think of one like we're talking about motivational speaking and, you know, the words that are mostly thought about in motivational speaking, we put them into a Wordle. And the Wordle is just the representation of, well, you can do whatever you want. If you put the word, you know, inspirational in 100 times, it's going to be in there a lot. So it is just, it's kind of just a visual representation of what's in the content.
Got it.
And the other thing I would add is to keep in mind cognitive load. If it's not, I mean, the Wordle is really visual interest more than relating content. And so to a student who can't see the pretty little layout of the Wordle, it's not really, in my opinion, relevant to just tell them inspiration was here 7 times.
Right.
I mean, it's just cognitive overload.
Right.
Well, and I think that's why it was just sort of a unique situation. I had someone tell me that the only things that should be marked decorative are literally things like, you know, lines and arrows and things like that. And that if it's an image, it should have a description.
You get different schools of thought from different accessibility people. Cheryl and I are of the opinion, and I'm going to speak for you, Cheryl, that if if the information in the image has already been addressed on the page, or if it's a Wordle that's there for visual interest, but not really containing important content, that's decorative.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate all the feedback.
Coolio. Okay, so
Cheryl, we have a question from Lindsay saying, how does one use a YouTube video that cannot be edited by the instructor? I don't know if you want to briefly cover that. It's a big topic, Lindsay, but Cheryl may have a suggestion or two for you.
yes, and if we hold that for just 2 seconds, because
Okay.
I think if we go through the color contrast and the meaning one, at least
Perfect.
the contrast one, then I'm pretty good. We did links, we did tables. Yeah, so let's do I just want to show you the color contrast, and then we'll do the video audio because we're pretty good on time right now.
Okay.
Okay, so again, with the little man editor, and Helen puts it best, he's good for a couple of things, kind of like most men. Haha, just kidding. But he doesn't do everything. I'm kidding. He doesn't do everything, and that's okay, because what he does is he does it really, really well. And that's why we want to make sure that you use him for the headings, even though sometimes they don't say that you skip it, but the color contrast and the tables and the lists are amazing. So you can't go wrong there. So let's make this a color that would not pass muffins, as we say. Let's try this. Okay, looks a little light to me. So if I go down to the little man, yep, he says, you know what? That looks a little light. You're going to have to change the color. So instead of trying to figure out what color you need, if you click around in this box, as soon as you find one, and I usually take a little bit step at a time, especially if I don't want it to get too far off the color that I really wanted. And then if you click apply, it's done. Now here's another little tip. When you're creating your course, you may want to go ahead in the beginning and use one of the color contrast websites. There's one from WebAIM that will give you some ideas of the colors that go together, and then you just choose your colors. And in the new editor, I found this out, it's so cool. In the new editor, you can actually go down to the little paint, what's that called, palette, and choose your own color. So if you had a, this is called a hexadecimal number, you know, for web content coloring, you can paste one in there. So if you find one you like, you can create your own swatch, which sometimes I like to just make my own up. There, that's what I made. So if I wanted to keep this color, I can save it in my palette, which is very, which is very cool. Where'd it go? I should be able to save this. And then it saves it in my palette. See, it's right there. So I think that that's probably the best part of the little man with color contrast. I just want to make sure I covered all the other ones of how-tos. Yep. Oh, the color and meaning, like I said, it's just don't make the words, you know, don't refer to the color in your pages only. Okay, so video. And the question was about YouTube videos that you don't own. Was that it, Helen?
Yes, it's what are, how does one use a YouTube? It's basically how do you get it with accurate captions if you don't have the copyright?
That's very common question, because when we're working with instructors and they're like, I found the best video ever, but I don't own it. Our sequence is usually, number one, try to contact the owner of the video. Not successful too much, but that's the first thing that we have to do, is try to contact the owner. And then
and the reason you contact them is because they can turn on community captioning in Zoom and then, excuse me, YouTube, and then you or they can go in and actually edit the video itself.
Right. And then, by the way, even if the videos in your course is supplemental, anything that's online, anything in your course has to be accessible. So besides trying to, you know, get in touch with the owner, here's a controversial thing that I don't really, anyway, I'm not going to say that. I don't know what to do besides that, number one, because it used to be we'd get a transcript together, but that's not, it's not good enough, really. I've been using DIY Caption as an extension to Chrome. Unfortunately, though, I hate saying it, it has been down the last couple of days, but that's one way to edit the captions. But also now, 3C Media, they won't do outside, right? Or do they, Helen? No, that's what I didn't think. So it's kind of a bugaboo. Now there's a lot to be said about creating your own videos, right? But if you can't, then Helen, help me out, because I don't.
Another thing I often recommend, and I'm going to go find the thing where we have the how to handle captions. But another thing you can do, Lindsay, or anybody, is do a filtered search in both Google or YouTube, where you're specifically asking for closed captioned, not just any. So you put in the topic and then you click the tool that says filter for closed caption. It doesn't give you 100% results. You still have to check the videos to make sure that it's got punctuation and everything, but it does filter out the obviously badly captioned videos, and it narrows the search results. So you can find an alternative that will meet the needs of the video that you can't use.
Absolutely.
And while Cheryl's answering other questions, I'll go look for the page where we talk about how to deal with captioning, which has a couple of other ideas.
Right, and while we're there, I'll click on the resource page that we have for, let me bring that back over. And I'm gonna take this one here for Section D. This is a public course that you can get to, and we're going to give you the links as well. And then you can go in and step through. It's also adoptable, so this course you can adopt for your campus. And it just goes through each one of them, each one of the items that we talked about in detail, and you get good examples. Like here's for audio, video, and it has the 3C Media. Oh, Amara too. I guess you could use Amara too as a third captioning for third-party videos. And the community captions tool is really cool. And more people are aware of it now, so that they're willing to turn that on, which is really cool. And then it's like everybody gets to fix the captions. Hopefully they do it well. What other questions do we have?
And hold on, with the thing you're showing, that's actually intended for use by DE coordinators to provide the course for your college. Mm-hmm. So that's called Aligning Section D. A lot of the same information is in the next resource I'm going to put in the chat, called Course Design Resources. That's the one that has the same info, but it's intended for individual instructors. Right. So you're not going to get all the stuff about how to adopt the course and all that stuff that you don't really care about. And in the Section D area is where you'll find the information Cheryl was showing about videos and other things. The next question is, and Heike has her hand raised up, so this, I don't know if this is the same question or a different one, but in chat, Heike had put, does anyone have tips for apps that convert existing audio, speech to text? And so Cheryl, I didn't know if you had any suggestions for speech to text apps that you wanted to share.
To text apps. Trying to think off the top of my head. I do have Natural Reader on my computer that will take, that one will do text to audio, but speech to text,
I would Google it. I know there's
not only that, we use
stuff out there.
Yeah, we use at Coastline, where I teach part-time, they use Relay, so we do the captions and then I take the file. So you could actually just record your voice and then it'll make the captions and you get a file from it. But then that would happen with anything that would create an SRT file, right? Just like for captioning. But if you just wanted the text, then I don't know.
And John just put in the chat otter.ai, which is something else that one of our accessibility people just recommended to me. So check out Otter, OTTER.ai, and see if that would be of use to you. Heike, you do have your hand up. Do you have a question you want to ask live, or was that the question? If you do, you can unmute yourself. Otherwise, we'll go on to the next question.
That was actually, well, I have lots of questions about the captioning that is not working for me, but so I will look at the chat after in the archive. Thanks.
Okay, and then Bernadette O'Leary, you have your hand up. Do you have a question still? You can feel free to unmute yourself.
Yes, my question was in regards back to the table. So I don't think that our campus is using this revised rich content editor. So I think I figured out what my question was, because I copied over a table from Word and I could not create the lines that separated the different cells within the table. It would only give me a border. So I think that the solution to that is to create the table within Canvas. Is that correct?
That would be the easiest, quickest way to be fresh, but also so you're in the old editor?
Yes.
Okay, well, you know what, oh wait, this one doesn't have it. In the old editor, it's the same, because all you need to do is, in the properties is where you can choose the border, right? And then the line in between should come. But I don't like to copy from Word, because it's like a mystery world of what comes over.
Well,
so
once you explain that, it clicked in my head, oh, I should just probably create it within the rich content editor, and then that probably would solve all the problems. So I'll try that.
It really does. And it takes a lot less time doing that than it does trying to troubleshoot, what's going on with Word.
All right. Thank you, Cheryl.
Well, you're welcome.
The chat has been flying by, so I may have missed a question that somebody had. If so, go ahead and raise your hand or put it in chat again if you have something you would like Cheryl to answer in the last few minutes that we have.
Yeah, Tamara does say, so going over the options in Canvas, there is a recorder in Canvas that will help you caption when you're doing your own videos. There's a lot of tools when you're doing your own videos. Canvas Studio will also do recordings and captioning and quizzing. If your school has TechSmith, Camtasia, Snagit, Relay, then you have captions and quizzes as well. Play Pause It, partnered with 3C Media. If you have your own video, you can upload it or ask to have it captioned at 3C Media and use Play Pause It. And then there's a couple other ones too, depending on what your school has access to. And the recorder in Canvas also, like I said, you can do it for feedback, or you can create a video yourself. Screencast-O-Matic is another one that people use to create at least their own video, and then you can have it captioned. Like I said, either 3C Media or one of the tools that you have. Discuss captioning needed for Zoom.
Well, actually, there's one before that. Can you talk about PDFs? Are they accessible? So go off, because we want to make sure people know PDFs are not accessible. PDFs are a PIA.
That's right, PIA, as she says so lovely. Here's our deal on external files. We've been told, you're creating a Word document, and I'm a graphic person, I teach graphics, so in the beginning, PDF meant that if I create a document, a beautiful thing in Illustrator or Photoshop, PDFs meant that it was going to look the same. It wasn't accessible, it just meant it was going to look the same, and if you had the reader, you could view the PDF, right? So that's where it came from, is that in Word, if somebody got the Word file, they could edit it, but if I make it into a PDF, it's going to look like that Word document, but that doesn't mean it's accessible. So what we do is, our number one defense in external documents is, please make it a Canvas page. So if you've got a document, even your syllabus could be put into pages. But if you have a document that describes something, or it's a little article and it's all text, please, and you have copyright, or you cite it, please make that a Canvas page, because it's more accessible. Plus, on a mobile device for students, or just in general, the student doesn't have to open a new window and they're like, oh my gosh, look, I had to open a window for a PDF and there was one paragraph in it. So use your best judgment. say if it has to be a PDF, like a law document or a real estate form or something like that, then we work with you to make that accessible. And you would use Acrobat Pro to be able to fix a document like that. And there's a lot of resources at the @ONE self-paced accessibility courses that would be helpful. However, if you do have a document that has to, that you want to make accessible, you will find when you try to do your first PDF that it would be much easier to make a Canvas page out of it. Same thing with PowerPoint. So when we started, excuse me, I'm dry. Everybody had PowerPoints from the publishers and none of them were accessible. So that was like, oh my gosh, what do I have to do? And basically it was like, okay, start from scratch so that they are accessible. But I always ask, why is it in your course? Is it just for review? And maybe you could make it an outline. Sorry, I talk too much. Does that help?
And I'm just going to chime in and then we'll go to another question. Amy's asking, why wouldn't a PDF be accessible? Just like any document, Amy, all the things that Cheryl has talked about, if it doesn't have proper heading structure, if it doesn't have proper alt text, if it doesn't have meaningful links or color, all of those things. And then in addition, the PDF interface has tagging and all these other complicated things that also have to be made available to a screen reader in a certain way. And that's why we're saying PDFs are so problematic, because they're not straightforward or easy to make accessible.
And most often it is the reading order. So it looks good, and I'm talking about a Word document that's a PDF, or even if you create a PDF from scratch, what happens is a lot of times you're scanning something. So the PDF is actually an image. It looks like text, but it's an image. And so there's a way to do, optical character recognition, but then that's like so much more than you need to do. But like Helen said, it's the reading order and the fact that all PDFs are not created the same. And if it's a scan of text, but it's an image, then it can't be read.
Anne has her hand up. Anne, do you still have a question? If so, go ahead and unmute.
No, I got my answer online. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. And then Soshi has a question, or had her hand up. Do you still have a question, Soshi? If so, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, yes, I do have a question about Confer Zoom. How accurate do these captions have to be? And I know that's a whole other long
They have to be 100% accurate. I mean, punctuation, capitalization, the words have to be, exact. Because, and I'm not talking about like, a the or a then or anything, but if you close your eyes and listen to, if you read it and you're not watching the video at all, it has to make 100% sense. Now in Zoom, you have to go in and fix the transcript that's there. But if you created the video, right, if it's yours, then you could put it in YouTube and have more control over correcting it. And I think that would be your best bet, is if you did it yourself, or any of the tools that gives you captioning. But if you did it to YouTube, then you can have more control over fixing it.
And it needs punctuation, which Zoom transcripts don't really do a good job with punctuation. And the other thing I have found through hard-won lesson is I have to learn to speak clearly, because voice to text, if I'm speaking quickly or if I'm slurring my word, it's going to really have bad word matching. So you want to train yourself to enunciate properly so that you have less to clean up when you're cleaning up your transcript and trying to turn it into an SRT file for captions. Does that answer at all what you were looking for, Soshi?
That does answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
But not the answer I wanted.
No, captions are a bugaboo. One thing that I highly recommend, and a lot of people roll their eyes at me, but I script everything. Even if I'm doing a 90-second video, I script it because I don't want to be going off track or saying every 3 seconds, you know, all the things that I do when I'm just talking. And when I've scripted it, I then have my captions. I can just upload that to YouTube, and it's already got punctuation. It's already got proper word match. It's, you know, so that is one idea. If you're well organized like I am, you'll write a script and then you have your captions built in. I'm teasing.
It's the best way to do it though. If webinars are different, right? Because we're supposed to, you know.
I script my webinars.
No, I know you do. Yes, yes, yes. She's amazing. I wish I could do that.
She even scripted the Q&A.
I know my Q&A and I hand pick who's gonna. No, I don't. Okay.
She's got the Jeopardy board in front of her, Sean.
We got 4 minutes.
But seriously, if you're going to do a content video, please write a script or at least a good outline so that it's so much easier to do the captions from.
Okay, one question that looks interesting, and I don't know if you're going to have an answer, Cheryl, so maybe I'm putting you on the spot. Kelly is saying, what about math? If I want to share student work with other students, well, first off, you need permission. So you got to, you know, that's a different thing. But I'm not sure I'm understanding the question. I don't want to require students to learn LaTeX or take extra time for typing. Does that make sense to you, Cheryl, or Kelly? Do you need to unmute and tell us what it is you're asking?
I can elaborate just a little. My question got split. I accidentally hit return, but to have them type their math answers in addition to working them in pencil and paper and then type them up in some way so that they can be read is a little more than I'd like to ask students to do, or to learn LaTeX so they can format them. Or MathML, you know, one of those coding things that screen readers can read. So what do I do if I want to share student work, pencil and paper math work with other students? Like have them, like they would in a class, you know, exchange papers, find each other's mistakes, kinds of things. How do I accommodate that in a math class?
Well, if it's is it a synchronous time that you're doing this, or are you asking to do it? Okay, asynchronously. Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about, for example, using groups. I know like in English, people have peer review.
Yes.
Of each other's work. That's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. But I'm not sure how to do that in a way that makes sure that I'm not using PDFs.
Okay, so.
Or other files that aren't going to work.
Right, it's a great question. Two things that came to mind. If they're writing it out in pencil and paper, right, and then they're uploading it as an image, one way you can have them do it is talk through it, like actually not even do a little video, but they can record how they did it or whatever, so that there is an audio file if needed. But if you're in a class and you know that no one needs an accommodation.
But how do you know?
Well,
isn't that part of the point of accessibility?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yes, that is. What I meant was that most often you'll get a notification if somebody needs an accommodation outside of what you're doing online. So having the audio file does help. Having a description with the paper. But then I was thinking, is there a way that they could actually do it synchronously? Maybe you could try that once, where they're actually using a whiteboard perhaps, or doing it in a little, you know, in a group. But to answer your first question, it is very difficult to take an image of a math problem and then try to make that accessible. That is tough.
We're almost out of time. Shannon, you have your hand up. Do you still have a question? If so, go ahead and unmute, and that'll probably be the last one we have time for.
Thank you. I teach ESL synchronously, and it's like 12 hours a week. I'm wondering if, because, you know, my speech is presumably accurate, but when my students are responding in the class, sometimes it's not understandable or definitely not accurate. Would I really be responsible for trying to make sure that my recorded Zoom transcripts of like 12 hours per week are somehow accurate in their inaccuracies?
Pretty much.
Okay.
And so two things that you said, 12 hours, I got stuck on that. Is there a way that you can, make them smaller chunks so that your videos aren't that long? I really would, think that it'd be easier if you did pare it down, like in your sections of video. However, if it's posted for anyone in the course to view later on, then yeah, it has to be accurate, because it wouldn't be helpful then at all. And then the person that was listening to it wouldn't pretty much have a clue, right?
Okay.
So do smaller sections maybe.
Well, the whole point of taking a language class is to get interaction. So that's why I have it synchronous, so that they can interact with each other. So we do a lot of like breakout rooms work, and then we come back and share and then go back to breakout rooms. So it's kind of like that the whole time. They need one another.
Yeah, are you recording the breakout rooms or?
No, well, I think it doesn't record the breakout rooms, just the main session.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I just put a resource in the chat. We have created at @ONE a Pocket PD guide on micro lecture videos, so that you're not doing, huge, and this may not be relevant for you necessarily, Shannon, but just for anybody, so that we're giving you tips and guidance on how to create short focused videos rather than one big long one that we know students are not likely to watch. So that's in the chat. Okay, Cheryl, I think you are.
We're done. Thank you all very much for coming.
Cover. Didn't need to say at Reva. Reva, pandas used to be the Canvas mascot.
They're very
and so
lazy.
all of us have been collecting pandas because we still want the panda to be the Canvas mascot, even though Canvas has gotten rid of it.
Wow, really? Got rid of it for real?
Well, I was told it's no longer the official mascot.
It'll always be mine.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you all for being here. And if you want to have the chat, I'll remind you of what Cheryl told you at the beginning. Down in the bottom of the chat field are 3 little dots. When you click it, it will give you a save chat option. It will then save it on your computer, wherever it saves download stuff. So I'm not going to know what folder that is. You'll have to figure out whether that's your downloads folder or whatever you set up. But that way you can have all of the chat stuff if you want it.
Thank you.
May I ask a quick question? My name is Barbara. I'm from De Anza College. I just stopped in because I got completely confused about times and missed the D part that was last hour. Are you aware of that?
This section D started at 1 o'clock.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, I missed it. Okay. Okay, I want to just thank you all for doing this. I have heard about CVC for a decade at least. And it now is very real, and I love the resources and I love the conversation, and I'm going to be dropping in all the time. I just love this. I've wanted this forever. It's so good. And I just have a question about the office hour. Can anybody bop in there to the office hour?
Yeah.
Okay, and is there anything we shouldn't talk about there? Can we bring in all kinds of stuff? Like if I'm trying to integrate Cengage publisher tools to Canvas?
We may or may not know that kind of stuff. What we do want you to bring are your bank account numbers. Yeah, we're instructional designers, so we know a lot about a lot, but we are not Cengage people. We're not Zoom techs, so there's a certain level of question that we're going to say, gosh, at least I'm going to say, I can't answer that. Or you need to call Cengage, you need to call your Canvas admin, there's some other resource because we just don't know.
But you guys are Canvas experts, kind of, correct?
Yes. Although, again, if it's an admin question, like, why is my instance of Canvas not enabling something, we're not going to be able to help because we don't work at your campus.
Got it. Okay,
But
thank you.
Anything that has to do with course design,
Course design.
right? Canvas, accessibility, but also it does help if you come and ask your questions, and then we know what other questions are out there that we might, you know, be able to help with.
Would you, so Cheryl, okay, so Cheryl, Helen, and Sean, okay. So would you guys know whether Padlet or Flipgrid, are you guys familiar with those two tools?
Yes, and they're not fully accessible, but they're okay.
But they're okay?
Well, depends on what you're doing with it and how you're setting it up. And there's always a lot of, with external stuff, we are not in a position to guarantee to you that something is accessible because they change their platform so frequently, and the OEI can't sponsor, you know, what's the word, not sponsor, endorse.
Okay, so it would probably be worth my while to come into an office hour to know what you guys say before I start to do a bunch of work. This is great. Okay, so I would start with you guys and then take it from there.
And just so everybody knows, in the chat, I just put the CCC Accessibility Center link.
They're the people to contact for accessibility, really specialized questions, not me, certainly.
Okay, I just clicked on that, so I saved it. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Have a nice weekend, and sorry to bop in, but yeah.
Sorry you missed the
Sean, I really enjoyed the first one. You are slow like I am, in the sense that when you speak, you're slow, and it takes me from a slow speaker. I don't mean slow person.
No,
I love it.
Absolutely, I take it as a compliment.
It's all new to me. You guys are new to me. I've been teaching online forever, but now I want to align everything. This is just a wonder. COVID is horrid, but it's been a wonderful opportunity. It's burned through a lot of institutional rhetoric. So it's great. It's great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Bye, everybody.